Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Captain Taylor, obviously, from our award-nominated hit video on the crew, Mission Deep Sea. Award-nominated because I guess Hamilton 2 came out this year, but also, I guess, YouTube videos aren't musicals, so they're ineligible for the Tony Award. But that didn't stop us. In fact, Cosmos even reached out and included my quote on marketing material. So you might be saying, whoa, Taylor, not only did you not pin that correctly, but you're getting a little big for your britches, and I agree. So I thought today we would continue Soul October by looking at the crew original, but this time covering it from a solo perspective. And not only because I don't know what I would even add to the conversation about the crew, I mean, it's the biggest trick-taking game in a long time to come out. It's brought so many people into the hobby, and Thomas Sing can't sing his praises enough. But what's interesting about the solo variant that we're covering today by Tom Scoot, is the hook, you're playing alone, and you're playing with 3 other robots, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, who you can see their hand, and you're trying to manipulate their hands to complete these missions. But all these robots have kind of quirky behaviors that get in the way. So let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in the crew is made up of 4 suits numbered 1 through 9. There's also 4 rocket cards, which are the trump cards in the game. So again, we're actually going to set this up and teach only the 1-player rules. If you want kind of a good overview of how the crew works, there's a lot of various videos that I can link in the description that will teach you how to play the crew for regular player count, so that's 3 through 5. But for here, I'm going to show you to play solo. It involves you playing with 3 robots. So there's Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I have it as kind of Pikachu-y, Zelda, and Oddish, for thematic reasons that I'll explain in a little bit. So you'll deal all the cards out, and let's just say we're doing a basic mission here where we're trying to win 2 task cards, like the 6 and the 4 here. So after you deal the cards, then you flip them all face up, or you could just deal the cards face up because this is a super open information game. And you're going to want to splay them all out so you can see all the cards that each player, I guess player in each of the robots, has in their hand. So just like in regular the crew, whoever has the 4 rocket is the commander, and then instead of everyone getting tokens to help communicate, all 5 of the tokens will just go over here. This is kind of like a pile of action tokens that you can kind of spend to do various things throughout the game. So one of the things you can do is you can spend an action token to take the 4 rocket card into your hand and swap it with one of the cards from your hand into the exact same spot of whichever kind of robot that you took it from. So that's one thing you can do with the tokens, and this is during setup. And then also during setup is you can spend a token to swap around the cards to the various robots, depending on which hand you want to have for which robot. You might be asking, well, why would you want to do that? It's because the robots actually behave differently. They all have a unique kind of way they will play their cards. So we'll show that off into the trick play. So let's say we're not going to mess with using any tokens for setup. Let's draft these task cards just like normal. So the Pikachu car will take a task, and then Zelda is going to take a task. So now the Pikachu car, who is Dewey, or Huey in the rules, is going to lead to the trick. So how they work is they always play as if this is a line of cards, or a queue, that needs to be played first. So Pikachu car will always play the rightmost card into the trick if they are leading. So then going to Zelda over here, leader of Hyrule, they will always play their highest card. They'll follow all the legal rules, but they'll always try to play their highest. So they only have 1 pink, so the decision's actually pretty pointless here. They'll just play their 1 pink. And then Oddish, they are underground, they will always play their lowest possible. So they have 2 options here, the 8 and the 4. They're going to play that 4. So then when it comes to you, or us, I guess in this case, you can just play the game like you're normally playing. So it's pink, we have to follow suit, we can play either the 5 or the 6. So let's play the 6. So Zelda's going to win the trick. Zelda will collect the trick, and then when they lead, they always want to lead the highest. So highest means their strongest card, so they'll actually always lead their highest trump card. So Zelda's going to play the 2 of trump. As you can see, Oddish over here actually doesn't have any trump cards. So what Oddish will do is when they don't follow suit, they're actually just going to play their lowest card. And so that's the 2 here. If it was a tie, like they had 2 different 2s or multiple of the same lowest number, you can just pick whichever they play. So we have to follow suit here. So that's either the 1 or the 3. And then the Q, or Dewey, the Pikachu car, is going to play
their rocket card because they also have to follow suit. So they will collect this trick and then lead, again, their rightmost card. So as you can see the flow here, Zelda is going to play their highest. They have 2 8s. You can choose which one they want to play. Maybe they play their yellow 8. Oddish has to follow suit pink, so they play their only pink. We also have to follow suit pink. So then Oddish will win this trick. So now Oddish is going to lead their lowest. So it can be either... Oh, no, it can just be the 5 blue, because the 5 was lower than the 2 6s there. So then we have to follow suit, but we can play whatever we want. So then it's Kiwi's turn, and again, they don't just always play their rightmost or their Q, they have to follow suit. So they play the 4 blue that was kind of at the back of the queue. So coming to Zelda, they would have to play their 8, right? Because they always want to play their highest. But we really want them to take the 6 with their blue 8 for later. So what these tokens also do is during the course of the game, you can spend it on its green side to make that robot behave how you want it to behave. And they can play whatever legal cards that you want them to play. So instead of playing that 8, because that's just how they were programmed to play, you can make them play the 1, 2, or 3 blue here. When you spend a chip, you can't just make them play whatever you want. It has to be a legal combination if they can. So in this situation, if they didn't have the 1, 2, 3 of blue, you can't spend a chip to not play that 8 because that's what they, have to follow suit with. But we could spend it here to make them not play their highest and play maybe this 3. So then Oddish will win the trick. So now when it's Oddish's turn to lead, now that they've played that blue 5, they can now play the blue 6. So now it's set up for Zelda to try to win. So again, we just play into it. The Pikachu car plays its pink 3 here because it was just the rightmost of cards. If they had no cards to follow suit in, they again just play their rightmost. So then Zelda, their natural behavior is to play their highest. So now, when they play their 8, they actually did capture the task they were hoping to capture. So I've set up a fake scenario here to illustrate kind of another way you can use your tokens. So say I led the 4, which is the task that Pikachu wants. So looking at their queue here, they would play the rightmost following suit. So they would play this 1. So we could spend a green to make it so they play the 6, or you can spend it as a red, and what that does is it makes it so they just ignore this card for their playing suit functionality. So that means this robot would actually play this 6, which is nice because we want them to win that, and they'll be able to. If in this example we were leading again though, and we played the green, even though there's a red chip on here, if they do have to follow suit, they will just play it and the chip will then just be discarded and used. Because even though you can kind of delay things like we did in the last example, it would always still have to follow the rules of trick-taking when it comes down to it. In that last example, you might be wondering, why wouldn't you use just the green chip to play the 6 as opposed to the 1 to kind of deter the 1 for later? What was kind of the reason there? Well, sometimes there is a good reason to kind of delay a specific card out of kind of the logic of the robot, but also in the missions that show the dead communication symbol, you can't play the token on its green side. So you can only play it on its red side. So whenever there is missions with the limited communication, that's why using the tokens in the gameplay as red is used. An example of using the tokens during setup is maybe on the next hand, you didn't really want Zelda to have the 4 because they'll just play it right away, right? So maybe you spend a token and you take that 4 commander card from her and you give her the 2. So now you are the commander. Also, you could spend the token just to move things around. So maybe you didn't want the Oddish player to have 3 rockets because they'll usually play them just near the end, and that might be a little bit strange. So you can, for 1 token, swap around the cards between all of the robots. And so you can give Oddishes to Pikachu, or I guess, Hueys to Deweys. You can kind of just split them out however you want. When you're moving cards around with the robot Dewey that can't rearrange their cards and has to play them in order, make sure when you do deal out, just be moving them kind of in stacks like this, right? You maintain the order. The rules say when you do this swap, you're actually swapping around just the hands of the robots, so I don't believe you can swap your hand with one of the robots. You're just kind of moving them around. So that is the crew, and I genuinely don't know what to say about this game that hasn't already been said. It's the biggest trick-taking game in a long time. I know Fox and Force and Skull King were hits, but the crew is it's out of this world with how big it is. and it's brought so many people in the hobby, and it's such an amazing game. I think it's easily top 10 trick-taking games for me. I love cooperative, so I think that adds to it. But there's such a wealth of game in such a simple concept that I totally get why it's so many people's favorite trick-taking games and so many people's maybe gateway game into trick-taking. I know trick-taking is a little bit of, I don't want to say a gatekeepy, but it's maybe a little harder of a genre to get into. There's a lot of terms, and I'm guilty of this myself. I had a friend watch this channel, and they had no clue what was going on in the rules explanation. There's just so many words that I think trick-taking as a genre is a little jargon heavy. But I think the crew has like perfectly brought so many people in, and it's honestly, if I had to pick a game to show people, if they're okay with cooperative games, this is the peak. I don't know what else to say. It's just an amazing game. I've played a lot of solo games. I love the puzzle of it all. I think it's nice to have that kind of slow feeling of just playing a game by yourself and not having to feel bad for taking too long or really thinking about your move. And I've noticed the solo genre kind of lends itself pretty well to puzzles and kind of puzzly gameplay. What's interesting about the crew at 1 is, although it uses trick-taking rules, I think it's pretty much just a puzzle, which isn't a bad thing. But as we've played before, like Follow the Suit, Solitaire, where that is a trick-taking game at 1, this is more of like a puzzle game with trick-taking flow. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually really, really like it. This is probably one of my favorite solo games, just because of that puzzling nature. But what was interesting was it didn't really get me on a trick-taking level. I know I was using the rules, I was kind of mathing it out and planning everyone's hand, and it was fun to do. It was pretty brain-burnery, especially in the later missions, and it was very, very rewarding. I actually loved it, so I don't know why I'm making this sound like a negative, but it just wasn't really a trick-taking game to me. When all the hands are open and it's kind of just like a kind of a math puzzle or a logic puzzle to sort out, it lost what I love about a trick-taking game. And there's that level of pushing your luck and trying to predict and deduce, and that tactical nature of like a trick-taking game. It was just kind of gone. So it was interesting to see all of that stripped out of a trick-taking game, and then what are you left with? The trick-taking genre is a funny one because it is really loose, it is very based around feeling, and it's interesting to see when games like War are compared to trick-taking, or For Sale, or some people talk about different auction games are trick-taking games, really. And I've seen pushback in going back and forth on what really is a trick-taking game and trying to hit that feeling of it. And it's usually because a lot of those games have no following suit, or you can pass, and things like that, to make it less of a trick-takery feel. And it's interesting in this one where it's 100% the trick-taker that everyone would agree is a trick-taker. The crew is very classic trick-taking. I know it's cooperative, but there's hidden information, there's following suit, there's trumping. There's a lot of the classic structure of a trick-taking game. But the fact that it goes down to one player, and all the hands are face up, you turn it into such a different feeling game. It's really showed me that there's parts of trick-taking that aren't in the definition of what a trick-taking game is, but are almost like integral to that feeling. I know a lot of times I've said like, maybe I don't like the stick element where you can play whatever you want because it feels a little less restrictive, which I like in a trick-taking game. But I realized the number one thing in a trick-taking game is just mystery. When you have hands face up and everything's open information, just that mystery is just gone. It becomes planning, which was fun. It was a very interesting exercise, especially thinking that far ahead was pretty crazy. But it's wild that, I don't want to say crazy twice in a row, it's wild that trick-taking can just fall apart so easily, and that feeling can kind of just fly away depending on a few rules tweaks. I know I'm sounding really dumb because it's like I'm saying, oh, rock, paper, scissors isn't as fun when you know exactly what your opponent's gonna play. But what I'm trying to get at is that you can change so many things about a trick-taking game. That's kind of what this channel is about. You can have no trump, must lead, play two cards of the trick, pass cards, all these different things you can kind of tweak, all these levers and pulleys. But if everyone's open information, you don't really have a trick-taking game. I didn't really, that point really didn't hit home until later. Really, the mystery is the biggest part to a trick-taking game for me. So that is The Crew, and I'll say it again, The Crew 2 through 5 is an amazing trick-taking game. The Crew at 1 is an amazing puzzle game. So I loved playing that puzzle. It was super fun, super rich, and I love playing The Crew and trying to get all the missions and even the side missions. So I would say I would recommend this 100%, obviously at 2 through 5. At 1, I'd recommend it for puzzle. So maybe it gets like a special puzzle award. And then also the trick-taking award for 2 through 5. But anyway, thanks so much for watching.